Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the episode Hyperion of Avengers Assemble. And overall, I thought this was a reasonably decent episode. It's really, at the end of the day, a bit of a character study of the episode's villain, Hyperion. And in the comics, there are actually quite a few alt versions of Hyperion. I think there's like at least 5 different versions. 2 are villains, 2 are heroes, and 1 is a flesh-eating zombie who went on a cannibalistic rampage across Kansas before dying from mad cow disease from having eaten an infected cow. And no, I'm really not making that last one up. That did, in fact, happen in the comics. And it was just as stupid as the way I described it sounds. So anyway, now one of the interesting things that's raised in this episode is at the beginning when Black Widow says, "Well, what happens when somebody says no to Hyperion? You know, what happens when somebody says no to the most powerful person on Earth?" And that is, at the end of the day, kind of the question that this episode asks. That there need to be checks and balances, even among heroes. The famous storyline in Marvel Civil War was to some degree about that. And this is something that's actually been raised in everything from superhero stories to even the Forgotten Realms fantasy universe has basically brought up this idea that there does need to be someone who will balance out people, because even people with good intentions, if they are in a position where they cannot be challenged, where they cannot be questioned, things can go south pretty quick. And I do like that this episode at least briefly shows the Avengers trying to reason with Hyperion. But frankly, I think they could have. I really wish they'd tried. I wish that they had spent more than just a few seconds trying to reason with this guy. Now, granted, this is mostly meant to be an action episode, but still, it just doesn't. It just doesn't feel like they tried very hard to reason with him. But then again, Hyperion did put them in a position where talk was pretty clearly not going to work. So I'll let that one slide. Now, I've not really read a huge amount of stuff with Hyperion in it. If you have, obviously he's meant to be an XP of Superman, and his team, the Squadron Supreme, who are vaguely alluded to in this episode, but not mentioned, were basically riffs on the Justice League. And for the most part, the role of the Squadron Supreme was for give the Avengers a chance to basically just beat up on the Justice League. And Marvel has more than a little bit of a tradition with this. If you pay attention, you'll notice that, for example, the Imperial Guard of the Shi'ar Empire from the X-Men comics are very, very blatantly based on the Legion of Superheroes. And of course, DC has done the same thing at poking fun at Marvel heroes. And, this is one of those things that, frankly, I always thought made the sort of friendly rivalry between DC and Marvel fun. But anyway, getting back to this episode, the thing that I really just felt bothers me more than anything about this episode is, at the beginning, Hyperion is presented as, this absolutely unbelievably unstoppable guy. And while the Avengers certainly have to work for their victory, it's like, wow, he certainly seemed a lot tougher at the beginning of this episode than he did at the end, where the Avengers are able to beat him. Now, granted, we wouldn't have much of an episode if the Avengers didn't win, but still, it's just like, well, that was actually a little bit easier than the whole thing at the beginning, which, is it just me, or was that basically a rehash of the opening scene, of basically kind of a rehash of Armageddon, that Michael Bay flick, that really, really terrible Michael Bay movie. Oh wait, really, really terrible describes so very many Michael Bay movies. God, I still can't believe I actually paid money to see Transformers: Dark of the Moon. I actually paid money to see that movie. Okay, so let's look at the notes here. Okay, so all this aside, I have to say that the action in this episode was handled well. As I said, they do a really nice job of presenting Hyperion's character. Now, granted, he's not a terribly deep villain, but we do get to see various sides of him. We understand what happened. We understand why he is the way he is, and it's set up that rather heavily handedly that they might actually end up having to let this guy out of that cage, which of course looks suspiciously like the one that they threw Loki in, and later Thor in the Avengers movie. And of course, there's lots of little shout outs to the movies in this episode. You see the Avengers apparently hanging out at that shawarma restaurant. You see Thor throwing glasses on the ground. So I do have to say that I liked that. So overall, I think, as I said, this is a reasonably decent episode, but it just feels like that Hyperion got way either that Hyperion was like either overhyped or took a significant power down by the end of this episode. And so that that particular issue seems uneven. And there's also the question, like Black Widow raises that, okay, well, who says no to Hyperion and all this? Kind of ignoring the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong. If it wasn't both in the movies and in the comics, we've seen Iron Man basically say, "Hey, U.S. government, you want to kind of get involved, like have some sort of oversight on me and my technology. You guys can go f yourselves." Even though it actually would not be unreasonable for the government to want to, like, hey, you have this insanely dangerous technology that you're using to get into brawls and go around and do all this stuff. The sort of thing that the government generally tends to not approve of. And of course, the Hulk spends all this time rampaging around, smashing stuff. Thor just kind of goes around and does whatever he wants, and only pays the most token of acknowledgments to Earth customs at times. So yeah, who says no to the Avengers? I mean, sure, technically they're under the auspices of Shield, but the Avengers just kind of go off and do whatever they want most of the time, and get into public brawls with each other and endanger the lives of the good people of New York over stupid, petty reasons, and generally engage in more than their fair share of unquestionably unheroic behavior. And very rarely do they get in any actual trouble for it. So, yeah, Black Widow, you raise a good point, but look at who you're hanging out with. So, yeah, I think we're just going to leave it at that. Anyway, guys, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.